about Mark. We're in our 5th week of talking about Mark. Just so you know, we're probably going to take a little break when we get to Christmas. As tempting as it is to not teach about Christmas around Christmas, we're going to talk about Christmas because it's an exciting time of year. And not only am I just get a little nostalgic, it's just kind of, I'm the same guy. I like watching, what's the Muppets Christmas Carol, just like everybody else. And so we're going to talk about that, and maybe again how we can see God use that not only to see us grow and connect with Jesus, but how we can, at a time when everyone's kind of aware of it, to maybe see people come to him. But we'll take a little break. So how many of you watch, am I echoey? I feel like I'm talking really loud. I'm sorry. I'll try to whisper. How many of you watch a reality show? You don't, okay, 1, 2. I do, I got to admit. Reality shows are not real life. I remember how devastated I was when I kind of began to realize that. Remember when reality shows started? The first one I really remember was Survivor. And you guys know we're big Survivor fans. But in realizing reality shows are not like real life. They're, in fact, finding out that they're kind of scripted, finding out that they're kind of managed is super disappointing. But I was thinking about this, like dating does not look like a dating show on TV, a reality dating show. You don't all live in a mansion and you're not all super attractive, and you don't, for your date, to get to know somebody, go bungee jumping off a hot air balloon over the Eiffel Tower, right? And that's just a casual date like we normally would do, right? So, this, you don't get, we don't have to spend all our time all day all worrying about whether someone's going to vote us off the island and whether we can win some kind of weird we got to throw a coconut through a hoop and then make a puzzle and then worry about if I didn't do good, then somebody, then Karen over here is going to be mad and vote me off so I don't win $1 million. And we look at, and I kind of thought, well, reality shows are kind of fading away. And then I started looking to see what's still on. Oh, they are everywhere. Life is not like millionaire guys who made a ton of money from selling duck calls and run around on 4-wheelers every day. Life is not like Kardashians, whatever that is, or some super tan people who talk horribly living in New Jersey. Life is not like cops, right? Every time they pull somebody out of a car, they're like, it wasn't me, these aren't even my pants, I don't even know why you're calling me over. That guy. I found out House Hunters is not real. So disappointing. That they've already bought the house and they're just showing 2 other houses. Fixer Upper. Did you know you cannot fix up a beautiful home in 38 minutes? I did not know that until after. It's not like that. There are Property Brothers. Apparently not all real estate agents and and contractors don't look like that. Apparently that, are clean shaven and attractive and walk in with their spackle and everything's beautiful. In fact, there's like 14 Property Brothers shows. Those guys, between the 2 of them, 14 television shows. I just made that up, but it seems right, doesn't it? There's things about, there's reality shows about forging swords. There's reality shows about tattoo artists. There's reality shows about tattoo artists. There are shows that break down the reality show afterwards. There's Real Housewives, there's Real House Husbands, there's preachers, there's pickers, and on and on and on. I don't even want to know what pickers is, to be honest. But what do they all have in common? There is no reality in any of those shows. It is all made up. I take that back. There's one reality, Great British Baking Show is the only good reality show. So, if you want a little bit of wholesomeness, watch the Great British Baking Show. They help each other. And at the end, you know what they win? A plate. There's no cash prize. They win a plate. It's fantastic. If you haven't watched it, do yourself a favor and watch it. But in reality shows, they're not making deep friendships. They have really bizarre, unrealistic worries and priorities, and it just is not real life. What does real life look? If we did a real reality show, the reality show about reality, it would be super boring and nobody would watch it because they would have things that friends and family look like, well, us right here. Right? This is who they'd show. And they'd show things like washing the dishes or not washing the dishes, putting gas in the car, right? You never see someone in a reality show stopping to put gas in the car. I'm so sorry. How many of you put gas in the car by gallon, and how many of you put gas in the car by time? Do any of you do this? I have 5 minutes. I put in 5 minutes of gas. I'm not going to say who does that, but it's a really efficient way to do it. You never saw somebody going shopping, maybe you see him shopping for a luxury car, but you don't see him going to the grocery store. You don't see him going to the doctor. You don't see him sitting for 3.5 hours watching reality shows. That's not what real life is like, worrying about work and grades. Nobody goes to work on a reality show, right? Just the nuts and bolts of life. Living in reality is hard, but we try to live like a reality show, right? We kind of want to be attractive and easy and comfortable and have priorities be things that are adventurous and exciting and fun, and the mundane brings us down and it's difficult. But Jesus wants us to live in his new reality. Jesus wants us to live in reality, be able to live in this earth with all the difficulty, with all the work, with all the tough stuff, with all the tough people, and still somehow live in his reality above and through it. I love the end. I'm kind of giving away the end here, but the end of the Serenity Prayer, when we do it by Reinhold Niebuhr, at the end of Life Path, we read this. And most 12-step programs read the first 3 lines of the Serenity Prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to understand things I cannot change, right? That whole thing. But the end of it is so powerful. The rest that most of the other groups don't read, but we read in ours says this: living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy in the next. Actually, sermon done, right? The reality Jesus wants us to live in is not one that everything's perfect or everyone agrees with me or there's no conflict or there's no pain or there's no difficulty or that he promises to fix it all immediately. He says, look, stay with me. You'll be reasonably happy. And then I promise you'll be supremely happy in the next. So let's get through today. So I want to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the new reality of Jesus. Before we get to that, just a little bit of context. I'm going to skip over a chunk. So those of you following in your study of Mark, I want to briefly talk about this and catch us up to speed before we get into this message. So here's the message before the message, part 3. Third message before the message. Thanks. I told Dave, I hope this is why he's laughing. I told him beforehand, I said, I wrote a really small sermon this week because we had Missions Moment and we have communion, and I asked Peter to do an extra song, and then all week long I kept adding to it. So it's going to be the longest sermon I've ever preached. So, sorry. So here's the thing. So right after last time we saw that Jesus healed on the Sabbath, and remember we said that the Sabbath was made for men, not for God, to help us be connected to God, because the disciples were had picked some grains of wheat, that delicious snack, and were eating it as they walked along. And then the end of that, and then it bleeds into chapter 3, where Jesus is again, he's in the synagogue, and the religious leaders are still trying to catch him, and they're watching him. It says they're watching him closely, and they see this guy who has a withered hand, a crippled hand, and they're just hoping, they're like, oh, please heal him, because you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath, and we want to get you. And I love this. It says in verse 3, Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, come and stand here in front of everyone. So the guy with the deformed hand comes up. And then he turned to his critics and asked, does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? It's a day for... They probably didn't want to answer that. They didn't believe in that. It's like, no, it's a day for following rules. It has nothing to do with good or bad. It's a day for following rules. But he says, does the law permit doing good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save a life or to destroy it? But they wouldn't answer him. Why? Because they knew they had no good answer. And he looked around at them angrily, and he was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. Then he told the man, hold out your hand. And the man held out his hand, and it was restored. At once the Pharisees went away, and they met with the supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus. So it begins. So Jesus says this, look, you're allowed to do good works, and even if it breaks the rule, the law is more important. The law of love. is more important than the rule. And he healed the man. But I love, this is one of the few times, this is one of the only times that Jesus is said to be angry. And his response here was angry that their hearts were so hard. And I love this, what made him angry was they were keeping this man crippled, and also that they had hardened their hearts. And not only to make him angry, it was an anger and sadness. He loved the Pharisees. Do you know Jesus loves Pharisees? They forgot the reason for the Sabbath. They had rules over relationship, and this made Jesus angry. It made him mad. And so the Pharisees, this is an important thing, though. The Pharisees see what Jesus is doing. He's breaking the rule to follow the bigger law, and they don't get it. And so what they end up doing is they decide to go work with the political forces to try and kill Jesus. They begin to plot. They begin to make allies. And they begin to, in their reality, in the reality of the world, in the earthly kingdom, do what seems smartest in order to hold their power and not get voted off the island, and they start making alliances to kill Jesus. And then the next chunk it's talking about this. Jesus goes out in the lake with his disciples, and a large crowd is following him, and I'll summarize from all around. And Jesus is teaching his disciples, and he's saying, like, have this boat ready because it's going to be super crowded, and I'm going to get on there. And there's so many sick people and so many people coming to Jesus. He's so popular because he stops and he heals everyone, and he teaches everyone, and he's exhausted. They don't even have time to eat. And he's casting out demons, and he's healing, and especially the demons that he's casting out, they all want to, like, as they're leaving, like, you're Jesus, you're the Son of God, right? And he says, kind of Wile E. Coyote fashion, right? No, but Jesus shuts him. He's like, no, I'm not here for celebrity. I'm not here to be told how great I am. I am here to serve you, these people. I am going to exhaust myself serving people. And my people around me, my team that's with me, are going to watch and be a part of that. He was not about celebrity, he was about service. So let's talk today about, what does that mean? First point is the real team, the reality of Jesus, the new reality of Jesus. His real team, he finally picks his real team. Mark 3:13 through 15 says this. Afterwards, Jesus went up on a mountain, and he called out to the ones he wanted to go with him, and they came to him, and he appointed 12 of them and called them his apostles, and they were to accompany him, and he would send them out to preach, giving them authority to cast out demons. And then in verse 16 it says, and these are the 12 that he chose: Simon, who was named Peter, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, but Jesus nicknamed them the sons of thunder, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot. So Jesus was known for praying. So we know that there were times when he'd leave in the morning and pray, and it says even in Mark, right? They couldn't find him, and he was out praying. So he goes up on the mountain. That's kind of where he would go to be alone. I don't know whether the crowds just couldn't make it, like the sick people couldn't make it up the mountain, or whether it just was a way of getting away. And he'd get away, and he says, oh, by the way, there are all sorts of people following me. There are a lot of disciples at this point. But he's going to call out 12 of them to be his apostles. And he selects a few of them after a night of prayer. People that he specifically wanted, it says, and that they were then willing. I want you guys to be my apostles. And they're like, we want to be your apostles. You know what? Jesus has called us. Are we willing to go? And then he says, here's your main gig. You're just going to be with me. And I'm going to give you power at times, and I'm going to send you out to teach, and I'm going to send you out to do miracles, and I'm going to send you out to heal, and I'm going to send you out to cast out demons, but you're going to learn to do that because I'm going to empower you, and you're also going to learn to do that because you're going to be kind of with me. Our main goal, our main mission is to be with God. His mission is to preach. And I love the way he defeats the enemy, the two kingdoms, the reality of Jesus' reality, the kingdom of heaven, and the reality, the earthly reality, the kingdom of earth. And the way he defeats that is not by coercion, is not by stomping out his enemies. His way he does this is by stealing. He steals people. He plucks them out of that other kingdom. He's teaching them, you're going to go preach, and you're not going to force. If someone doesn't want it, you're just going to shake the dust off, shrug your shoulders, and go, okay, they don't want it. I'm not going to yell at them. I'm not going to scream that they're wrong. I'm not going to constantly get in their face. I'm not going to make laws that make them be more gooder. I'm going to steal souls. I'm going to love them, and I'm going to care for them, and we're going to take them. pull people from one kingdom to the real kingdom. So he starts calling them apostles versus just disciples or followers. Or there were these layers, right? There were hangers-on. There were those who just wanted to be healed. There were a lot of them who were there to try and catch him out. There were some who just were there for the show. But there were people who were disciples, who were learners, right? They were people following. They were like apprentices. They were learning from Jesus. They're hearing his teachings. They're following. They're committed to be a part of this movement. But he takes these apostles and they're going to be more like ambassadors. They're going to be more like the ones who speak from, not only the learners, they're disciples, but they're leveled up disciples. They're going to be those who speak for the king in this new reality, this new team. They have this new role as this team. I love the personalities. I don't know, my dad was a preacher, and I'm not going to get choked up. I'm not going to. But one of the things he did, I think every year, might have been every other year, he would do a series on the 12 disciples, 12 apostles. And he found somewhere in the 70s, some church supply salesman person from the Bible bookstore came, and some guys had taken professional portraits, glossy portraits, dressed up like the apostles. And amazingly, they had fantastic 70s haircuts and beautiful beards and mustaches. And I think the robes were polyester. But he would put this up on these big pictures up on an easel, and then he would preach about that disciple. I always loved that apostle. But I love that there are these varying personalities and socioeconomic status and family and work and politics in this group, and they all work together. They were brothers. And the fact that they were a unit, that they were a team, that they were this new team that was on mission for Jesus and seen as a group, and yet they were so diverse. You had a couple sets of brothers who were infamous for getting along. Most of them were illiterate, but there were a few who were known to be educated. There were professionals and laborers. There was married and single. There was introvert and extrovert. My favorite one that I just thought about this time was, because right before this it talks about, we talked about last week, Matthew Levi, right, the tax collector who Jesus reached out and said, I want you to be one of my guys. He was a, collaborator with the Romans. And in the list, who's right next? Simon the Zealot, who was a political activist who was trying to kill collaborators with the Romans. And there they were on the same team. I wonder what those conversations were like. But they became a real team in spite of those differences, and maybe because of those differences. Maybe that's why this team existed, right? Jesus later, we hear, Paul talks about the body, the idea that we have different backgrounds and different abilities and different gifting, and we all bring something else to the table, and we're not all supposed to do everything. Maybe Simon the Zealot would be able to speak to some people that Levi the collaborator wouldn't be able to talk to, and vice versa. But they all came together. They all stayed in this team because of a commitment to Jesus and a commitment to his mission. And I'm going to throw this out. You're going to hear me say this often because this struck me this week. They took the mission of Jesus seriously. Meaning, they decided this was not just an idea that we like, but I am going to live it even when it goes against what I previously thought, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it makes people around me not like me. And I want Restore Church to be a place that takes the mission of Jesus seriously in action and in thought. And I think sometimes it's a thing we tack on. I know I do that. I like the idea, and then I live a different way. I just confessed that this morning to a couple people that I'm talking about living in reality, and there's some painful things that I'm just denying are real. Kurt and Pam are next Sunday is their last Sunday here. And I am complete denial about it. I'm pretending that's not happening. But if I'm going to take the mission of Jesus seriously, I'm going to live in this world as it is, not as I would have it. So Jesus trained them to speak his mission. He sent them out to care for people, to heal and to cast out demons, not argue, to speak the truth and love people. So we need to be on mission with Jesus. We need to take it seriously. We need to speak the truth when we need to. We need to care, look for ways to care for people, and we need to love our enemies for reals, even if other Christians don't get it. We need to preach the real truth, live the real truth. We need to rescue, not argue. We need to pluck people out of the opposing side. Let's win the way Jesus won. Be part of his new team, the message of love. Not try and get people to act good, but by trying to get people to live with a good Jesus. Can we be a team? Can Christians in America in 2021 actually be a team? Or are we going to continue to divide and divide and divide and divide till there's 3 of us in every church? Can we work with a Republican or a Democrat? Can we work with a rich or a poor? Can we work with a believer or a seeker? Can we work with an introvert or an extrovert? Can we work with someone who's deconstructing their faith and someone who's reconstructing their faith, or someone who's orthodox? Can we be on mission for Jesus and take it seriously with grace and humility and patience and truth and conviction with people who don't agree with us on everything? I hope that that's yes. One of the things I love about Restore is we've tried to do that. We've tried to be people who are going to love each other even if we disagree on some stuff, and admit that we don't always have all the answers. Let's be like the apostles. A vast array of personalities and understanding and background who are so serious about living with Jesus and fulfilling his mission that we are willing to stay as a new team. That's the real team. Next is real family. People were mistaking Jesus' mission and his calling, and they didn't quite get it still. So we're looking here at, and we're going to kind of skip around, Mark 3, 20 and 21, and then we're going to jump to the end to 32 and through 35. I think it's on your sheet. So the first half is this. One time Jesus entered a house, and the crowds began to gather again, and soon he and his disciples couldn't even find time to eat. Have you ever been that busy? Believe it or not, I have. And I make time to eat. Right? But there are times at the end of the day I'm like, why am I so irritable? Like, oh, I haven't had a snack. They couldn't even have time to eat. And when his family heard what was happening, they tried to take him away. He's out of his mind, they said. This well-meaning family, people who knew him and loved him, were like, he's so full of himself, he's deranged. We need to go rescue Jesus from doing his mission. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's absurd from our perspective, right? But at the time, I think people who loved him like, no, people are taking advantage of you, Jesus. You got to have a good dinner. And then in verse 32 at the end, it says that there was a crowd sitting around Jesus, and someone said to him, your mother and brothers are outside asking for you again. And Jesus replied, who is my mother? And they're like, oh, he's lost it. Who are my brothers? And they looked around him and said, look, these are my mother and brothers. Anyone who does God's will is my brother and sister and mother. Jesus was working so hard as a mission with his apostles that they were not taking care of their own personal needs, and they weren't eating well. And I get it. We need to have boundaries and we need to have self-care, but sometimes the mission is greater than our comfort. Evelyn, sometimes we got to realize it's dangerous in Florida and it's dangerous in Vietnam. And if God wants me in Vietnam, I'm going to go to Vietnam. So his family comes in and tries to rescue him, and it looked like he needed it. But here's the cool thing about Jesus, that he's looking there like, oh, you're too busy. Jesus knew when he needed to take downtime, right? He talks about it. He would go away and pray on his own. He would call a few of them and say, I just need to be alone for a bit, right? Let's sail across the sea. Let's do whatever we need to do. So Jesus knew when he needed that, and he took advantage of it. He did it. He gave us a great example of times of rest and times of work. But other people looked at it from the outside and didn't get what was going on, and they tried to change it. They misunderstood. They thought he was deranged and deluded, full of himself, and maybe a little bit nuts. And I'm a little commentary. I think sometimes when we're really seriously following the mission of Jesus, it looks a little bit nuts. People don't get it. But he says, I have a new family. My family that's trying to rescue me. I have a mission that I need to do, and that's with this family. It wasn't degrading his mom and brothers. He was elevating the other people around him. We're all part of this new family. We're all part of it. The real family that I have includes my mother and brothers and all of you who are following me, who are following this law, the new rule, the new mission, loving and caring. People willing to live in his reality. Serving even when you don't get served. So how do we apply this? Well, for us, maybe I would put this, that we don't give up just because well-meaning people tell us maybe we should. I think Restore Church is an example of that. I've heard from within and from without. I have heard from so often that this is a sweet concept. We love the mission, but it's just not practical. It's not practical to have a church that focuses on serving without getting, that tries to reach the marginalized. You got to be able to go out and get the church people or the people who are transferring or people who are kind of established and get what church is about so they can fund it and there can be bodies and they can serve it. And I get that. I love those people. Many of you are those people. Yes, I agree. We want you here. And we also want people who are marginalized and can't offer us anything tangible. People who don't get church. People who are afraid of or have negative impact of church. And just because this concept and this idea doesn't seem to fit what's worked before, and sometimes, and frankly, I get it, may seem like it's not working now, I am not going to give up on this vision. And I would love for you to go with me on it. If we're going to go down, let's go down doing what we know Jesus has called us to, and let's be serious about Jesus' mission. To love everybody, to not make concessions to make it easy, to serve first without demanding to be served, to not demand people swear fealty to our little church and our little group, but fealty to Jesus, to share without demanding we get something back, to take loving Jesus, the people who Jesus loved, seriously and act on it. I believe in slow growth. I admit it. I believe we're going to grow 1 and 2 people at a time in this family. Because this is a hard mission to grasp and to love. But I'll tell you what. Once you live in this reality, it's pretty addictive. Once you see Jesus begin to steal souls, once you begin to move in and follow that path, it is powerful. And it is worth it. I get it. It still may not work practically. I get it. But I'll be honest, I'm enough of a Pollyanna that I believe it is going to work. I believe this is the real mission of Jesus, and he's going to honor it and bless it. It may not look the way we ever think it's going to look, but I think he's going to continue to bless you and bless the people in our community because of the vision and the mission of this little group. And I think this little group isn't going to be little forever. I think taking the real family of God's mission and being a part of that can cause inconvenience and discomfort, and we need to be willing to live in that. Being part of Jesus' family, his real family, was being people who were willing to follow his mission, willing to follow his teaching with their whole heart and their whole lives, not in just their free time. Deb's been talking to me recently about this idea of the narrow path, and we've been talking about maybe redefining, understanding what it means to follow the narrow path. The narrow path doesn't mean you have to follow the rules. The narrow path probably means living in that tension between following what's right and being discerning with the Spirit and knowing how to act with individuals and yet still know the rules and living in discernment in that narrow path that you could tip to the wrong side at any time. Are we willing to walk that narrow path that Jesus has called us to? I want to be part of Jesus' real family, who's living under his power and living under his mission. And then lastly, the real kingdom. Part 3. I told you this was going to go long. I'm sorry. The real kingdom. We're going back up to verse 23. Jesus called them over and responded with an illustration. I love this. This is where he begins to explain. He's using parables and stories. And he says, how can Satan cast out Satan? Remember the Pharisees were like, no, he's just of the devil. How can Satan cast out Satan, he asked. A kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. Similarly, A family splintered by feuding will fall apart. If Satan is divided and fights against himself, how can he stand? He would never survive. Let me illustrate this further. Who is powerful enough to enter the house of a strong man and plunder his goods? Only someone even stronger, someone who could tie him up and then plunder his house. Jesus has this real kingdom, realizing that he's like, look, there's an earthly kingdom and a heavenly kingdom, and I'm here representing the heavenly kingdom. So if you say I'm healing somebody, if I'm doing good works because I'm powered by Satan, that makes no sense. He was accused by the religious leaders that he was healing the sick and casting out demons by the power of demons. And he argues that makes no sense. The earthly kingdom is not going to use good works to achieve its goals, and the heavenly kingdom is not going to use evil works to achieve its goals. Don't call evil just because it does not line up with the rules you created. A divided kingdom, civil war destroys. You don't stop evil with evil. You don't stop good with good. Evil is evil and good is good, even when it breaks the mold. You're saying, look, no, the real kingdom is me. The real kingdom is living in this world, but doing the will of the Father. There's a lot of stuff. There's way more in this passage, and I'm just not going to. There's way more. There's the stuff about the unforgivable sin, right? Blaspheming the Holy Spirit, which basically the idea that you're saying that something of God is of the devil. We're not going to get into all that stuff today, but the main thing I wanted us to get out of this is that as we live in the real reality of Jesus, we are living in his kingdom, and the world is the way it is, but we're empowered and we're part of his kingdom. We're part of Jesus' life, and if we take that seriously, we're part of his kingdom, the heavenly kingdom, that we will have the strength and the power and the mission to fight against the world's system. So let's be really careful of accusing people of being of the devil. Right? Be careful of how we attribute something. There are followers of Jesus who are attempting to love and care and preach and preserve the truth and stand firm for what is right. And how dare we say they're not only wrong, we can disagree, but how dare we say they are of the devil? They're leading people to Satan. And I hear it all the time these days. We want to be empowered and motivated by the truth, by the Word of God, and by his Spirit. And we're going to do the work that we're called to do. And we're going to live in the heavenly kingdom, and we're going to snatch souls from the earthly kingdom. Let's do good no matter what. Let's be discerning. I don't know what your version, I'm going to leave you with this, and then Peter's going to come up, we're going to do communion. But I want to leave you with this. What is your version of healing on the Sabbath? What is the thing that might follow the law but may break the rule? Is it loving a person or that other good and faithful followers say you can't love? Is it caring in a way that might seem like just too much of a sacrifice? Is it caring in a way that may seem like it's too much of a demand on my time? Let's let the world know we love them without shouting at them. Let's let the world know that we want them to be in God's kingdom because we love them. Even if other Christians think we're a traitor, let's love people who don't know him yet. Let's not be at civil war with ourselves. Let's not divide the kingdom anymore. Let's follow our God. Let's follow our leader. Let's follow Jesus. Mark 3:34 and 35. And he looked at those around him and he said, "Look, these are my mother and brothers, and anyone who does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." May we be people who live confidently in the reality of Jesus' love as ambassadors and disciples of the loving and caring family of God. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you next Sunday.